My name is Randy, a 32-year-old financial advisor from Boston. For the past 2 years, I've been secretly paying off my sister Amanda's $40,000 credit card debt. This Thanksgiving at our parents' house in Connecticut changed everything. I never expected my own kindness to become my humiliation. Before I tell you how my sister's words shattered our relationship, let me know where you're watching from, and hit subscribe if you've ever had family take your generosity for granted. Growing up, my parents always said I had a head for numbers. While other kids spent their allowance immediately, I was the one with 3 different piggy banks labeled save, spend, and share. That natural inclination led me to pursue finance in college, where I earned a full scholarship to Boston University. After graduating with honors, I landed an entry-level position at Meridian Financial Advisors and spent the next 7 years working my way up. Now, as a senior financial advisor, I help clients manage their investments and plan for their futures. The irony isn't lost on me that I couldn't apply the same principles to my own family situation. My sister Amanda, younger by just 2 years, took a vastly different path. While I was studying for finals, she was changing her major for the 3rd time. Eventually, she dropped out during her junior year, claiming college was too restrictive for her creative personality. What followed was a parade of jobs: barista, retail associate, personal assistant, yoga instructor, each lasting a few months before she quit or was let go. Between jobs, she'd travel or take expensive art classes that never seemed to lead anywhere. Our parents, both high school teachers with modest salaries, raised us with a strong family helps family mindset. When one of us struggled, the other was expected to step in. Blood is thicker than water, my mother would say, though I often felt the burden of this philosophy fell disproportionately on my shoulders. Look out for your little sister, they'd remind me, even as we entered our 30s. She's not as practical as you are. I still remember the rainy Tuesday evening 2 years ago when Amanda showed up at my apartment unannounced. Her eyes were puffy from crying, makeup streaked down her cheeks. She clutched her purse to her chest like it contained something precious, instead of what I would soon learn were maxed-out credit cards. "I messed up, Randy," she sobbed as I made her tea. "I really messed up this time." Over the next hour, Amanda confessed to accumulating just over $40,000 in credit card debt across 6 different cards. The debts came from impulse purchases, weekend getaways with friends, a failed attempt at starting an online jewelry business, and months of covering rent and groceries between jobs. "The minimum payments are over $900 a month now," she said, showing me the stack of statements. "I'm drowning and the collectors won't stop calling." I should have directed her to a financial counselor or a debt consolidation program. That's what I would have advised any client in her position. Instead, I heard our parents' voices in my head: family helps family. "I'll help you," I said already, mentally calculating how this would impact my own finances. "We'll set up automatic payments from my account. Minimum payments at first, then we'll start tackling the principal." The relief on Amanda's face made me feel like a hero. We hugged and she promised this was the wake-up call she needed. She would be more responsible, take her finances seriously, maybe even go back to school to finish her degree. I wanted to believe her. What I didn't tell her was that helping with her debt meant postponing my own plans. I had been saving for a down payment on a condo in Cambridge, a goal now pushed years into the future. I also didn't mention that I was setting up the payments to come directly from my account because I didn't trust her to transfer the money each month. For almost 2 years, I quietly paid between $1,200 and $1,500 monthly toward Amanda's debt, bringing the balance down to around $20,000. During this time, Amanda did secure a relatively stable job at a boutique downtown, though her salary barely covered her living expenses. What bothered me weren't the payments themselves, but watching Amanda's social media. Despite knowing her financial situation, she still posted pictures of weekend brunches at trendy restaurants, new clothes with designer labels visible in the photos, and most recently, a 4-day trip to Miami with her new boyfriend, Jackson. Each post felt like a slap in the face as I ate meal-prepped lunches at my desk and postponed replacing my 6-year-old laptop. Last month, while reviewing the payment schedule I'd created, I noticed something alarming. The balance on one of the cards had increased significantly. When I investigated further, I discovered Amanda had not only continued to use the card but had also opened a new one and charged over $3,000 in a single month. The resentment I'd been tamping down began to bubble up. I found myself lying awake at night, calculating how much I'd paid toward her debt and wondering if I was helping or enabling her. When my car needed an unexpected $2,000 repair the following week, and I had to dip into my emergency fund, the resentment turned to anger. Still, I said nothing. In our family, confrontation was never encouraged. Issues were swept under the rug in favor of maintaining peace. I convinced myself I would address it after the holidays. Family helps family, after all. The week before Thanksgiving, I found myself wandering through Nordstrom selecting gifts for my family despite my financial strain. This was our tradition, exchanging presents before dinner while waiting for the turkey to finish cooking. For my father, an expensive bottle of whiskey. For my mother, a cashmere scarf in her favorite shade of blue. And for Amanda, a silver bracelet I thought would complement her style. I charged these purchases to my credit card, telling myself it was only once a year. While wrapping the gifts that evening, my phone rang. It was my mother confirming details about my arrival. "You're still coming Wednesday night, right? Amanda's bringing her new boyfriend, Jackson," she said, her voice tinged with excitement. "They've been dating for 3 months now, and she says it's getting serious." "Yes, I'll be there around 8, I replied, trying to match her enthusiasm while thinking about the extra 4 hours of work I'd have to make up after taking Thursday and Friday off. After the call, curiosity led me to Amanda's Instagram. Her most recent post showed her and a tall, dark-haired man posing on a Miami Beach, cocktails in hand. The caption read, "Surprise weekend getaway with my love-blessed spontaneous adventures." The post was dated just 5 days earlier. With a sinking feeling, I opened my banking app and checked the recent payments to Amanda's credit cards. There it was, an additional charge of $1,200 on the card I thought she'd stopped using. Out of concern and frustration, I did something I'd never done before. I logged into the credit card account using the credentials Amanda had given me 2 years ago. The statement revealed purchases at airlines, hotels, restaurants, and boutiques in Miami. Even worse, I discovered she had opened yet another new card with a $3,000 limit and had nearly maxed it out in a single month. My hands shook as I closed the app. The past 2 years of sacrifice flashed before my eyes, the vacations not taken, the clothes not bought, the social invitations declined because I was channeling so much of my disposable income toward Amanda's debt. This couldn't continue. I needed to have an honest conversation with her. I decided I would confront her after Thanksgiving dinner. Family gatherings weren't the ideal setting for financial discussions, but waiting until afterward meant potentially watching her spend even more while I remained silent. I rehearsed what I would say during my drive to Connecticut on Wednesday afternoon, trying different approaches in my head. The New England landscape blurred past my window, trees, bare of leaves, early sunset, painting the sky in muted oranges and purples. Usually this drive relaxed me, but today my knuckles were white on the steering wheel. By the time I pulled into my parents' driveway, I had settled on a calm but firm approach. I would explain that I couldn't continue making payments if Amanda wasn't committed to changing her spending habits. It seemed reasonable, adult. The house looked the same as always, colonial style with white siding and black shutters, a wreath of autumn leaves on the front door. Inside, the smell of pumpkin pie and cinnamon greeted me along with my mother's warm hug. "You look tired, sweetie," she said, patting my cheek. "Are they working you too hard at that firm?" "Just busy season," I replied, not wanting to explain that my exhaustion stemmed from financial stress rather than work. My father emerged from his study to give me a quick embrace before returning to the football game on TV. "Amanda and Jackson are in the kitchen," he said over his shoulder. "Your mother's put them to work chopping vegetables." I found them there, but they weren't chopping anything. Amanda was perched on a countertop, swinging her legs while showing something on her phone to a man who could only be Jackson. He was even more handsome in person than in the photos, tall, with an easy smile and expensive-looking clothes. A half-empty wine bottle sat between them, and neither had made progress on the pile of vegetables beside the cutting board. "Randy," Amanda exclaimed when she saw me hopping down to give me a quick hug. She smelled of wine and an unfamiliar perfume that probably cost more than my entire skincare routine. "This is Jackson. Jackson, my big sister, Randy." The financial wizard Jackson said with a grin, extending his hand. His watch gleamed under the kitchen lights, a luxury brand I recognized from advertisements. "Amanda's told me all about how you keep the whole family's finances in check." The irony of his statement made me want to laugh, but I forced a smile instead. "Nice to meet you, Jackson." As we made small talk, I noticed a new tennis bracelet on Amanda's wrist diamonds catching the light when she moved. It definitely wasn't from a mall jeweler, and it definitely hadn't been purchased with her boutique salary. The sight of it made my gift still wrapped in my overnight bag seem inadequate by comparison. Throughout the evening, I observed how Amanda treated our parents' home, leaving dishes in the sink, draping her expensive coat over a chair, rather than hanging it up, helping herself to the good wine. My father saved for special occasions. Without asking. She'd always been somewhat careless, but there was a new entitlement to her actions that grated on me. "Mom, did you pick up those special gluten-free rolls I asked for?" she called from the living room, not bothering to get up and check herself. Jackson has a sensitivity. Jackson, meanwhile, made himself at home in my father's favorite armchair and offered unsolicited advice about upgrading their entertainment system as if their current television wasn't adequate for his standards. That night, lying in my childhood bedroom, I stared at the ceiling and wondered if I even knew my sister anymore. The Amanda I was paying debts for and the Amanda showing off downstairs seemed like different people. Sleep came late, and with it dreams of credit card statements growing taller than skyscrapers. Thanksgiving Day brought crisp air and sunshine streaming through frosted windows. I woke early hoping to help with preparations but found my mother already elbow-deep in stuffing preparation. Amanda and Jackson were still asleep, having stayed up late watching movies at a volume that kept me awake until well past midnight. "Can I help?" I asked, pouring myself coffee. "You could peel those potatoes," Mom replied, nodding toward a bag on the counter. "Your father's watching the parade, and those two probably won't be up until noon." We worked in comfortable silence for a while, the kitchen filling with delicious smells as the turkey roasted. Around 11, Amanda and Jackson emerged, both looking remarkably well-rested despite their late night. Amanda went straight for the coffee without offering to help, while Jackson rummaged through the refrigerator for juice. "Anything I can do?" he asked after his third glass, though his tone suggested he hoped the answer would be no. "Everything's under control," my mother assured him, though I noticed her glance at the clock, clearly calculating whether we'd finish in time. By 3 o'clock, we gathered around the dining table, which had been extended with leaves to accommodate the four of us plus Jackson. The traditional spread looked impressive. Golden brown turkey, cranberry sauce, glistening in crystal dishes, mashed potatoes, green bean casserole, sweet potato casserole topped with toasted marshmallows, and my mother's famous homemade rolls. Before eating, we observed our family tradition of sharing something we were thankful for. My father went first, expressing gratitude for having both his daughters home. My mother thanked God for our health and happiness. When my turn came, I spoke about being thankful for stability and family support. Amanda's expression during my brief speech was hard to read, something between boredom and irritation. When her turn came, she grasped Jackson's hand and announced she was thankful for new beginnings and exciting opportunities, with a meaningful glance at him that made me wonder if they had news to share. Jackson, when prompted, simply said he was thankful for good food and better company, raising his wine glass in a toast that seemed practiced rather than genuine. The meal began pleasantly enough with conversations about neighbors, recent movies, and local news. The tension I'd been carrying eased somewhat as I enjoyed my mother's cooking and my father's familiar stories. But the peace was short-lived. "So, Dad," I said during a lull, "have you and Mom made any changes to your retirement accounts since the interest rates shifted?" My father shook his head. "Haven't had time to look into all that. Why should we be worried?" "Not worried, but it might be worth reviewing. I could help you go through the options this weekend if you'd like." "Always," the advisor, Amanda muttered just loud enough to be heard. I ignored her comment and continued. "It's just that there are some new tax advantages you might be missing out on." "We're fine," my father insisted, clearly uncomfortable discussing finances at the dinner table. "The pension will cover what we need." "Dad, pensions don't always keep pace with inflation," I explained gently. "It's good to have supplementary." Amanda rolled her eyes dramatically. "God, Randy, can we have one meal without you turning it into a financial seminar? Some of us are trying to enjoy Thanksgiving." Our mother, ever the peacekeeper, quickly steered the conversation toward Christmas plans. "Will you both be here for Christmas Eve? I'm thinking of hosting the neighborhood caroling party again." "I'll definitely be here," I said, grateful for the subject change. "Though I might have to scale back on gifts this year. My car needed some major work last month, and it really set me back. Again with money, Amanda sighed loudly. I'm just saying. We get it, Jackson interjected with a chuckle that held no humor. Times are tough for everyone. Well, almost everyone. He winked at Amanda, who giggled in response. Something about their exchange made my skin crawl. I'm just trying to be realistic about my budget, I explained, keeping my voice level. The repair was almost $2,000, and that's not something I'd planned for. Maybe you need a better financial advisor, Jackson joked, helping himself to more turkey. Several family members laughed, though my father's seemed forced. The conversation moved on, but I noticed Amanda whispering something to Jackson that made him snicker. A few minutes later, as I was explaining to my mother why I might not make it to her friend Susan's holiday party, Amanda suddenly slammed her fork down. Stop asking for money, she said loudly, her voice cutting through the dining room. It's embarrassing how you're always hinting for handouts. The table fell silent. Even the clinking of silverware ceased. What I asked, genuinely confused. Every time we get together, it's the same thing, Amanda continued, warming to her topic. Your car, your rent, your whatever. We all have expenses, Randy. The rest of us just deal with them without constantly playing the victim. I stared at her, momentarily speechless. In what universe was I asking for money? I had never once requested financial assistance from my family, quite the opposite. Amanda, my mother began, but Jackson placed his hand over hers. She's kind of right, he said, looking at me with something like pity. It does come up a lot. I looked around the table expecting someone to defend me, but saw only uncomfortable expressions. My father studied his plate, while my mother twisted her napkin in her lap. Were they all buying into this bizarre alternate reality? When have I ever asked any of you for money? I asked quietly. It's not about asking directly, Amanda said with exaggerated patience. It's the constant poor me attitude, the hints, the little comments about how expensive everything is. We get it, you want us to offer. It's getting old. The injustice of her accusation hit me like a physical blow. For 2 years, I had silently redirected thousands of dollars to cover her irresponsibility. I had never complained, never thrown it in her face, never even told our parents, and here she was painting me as the financial burden. I took a deep breath and felt something shift inside me, a lifetime of peacemaking giving way to clarity. I looked at Amanda at her new bracelet and perfectly highlighted hair at the way Jackson nodded along to her ridiculous claims at my parents' averted gazes. In that moment, I saw the dynamic of our family with perfect clarity. You're right, Amanda, I said simply. Her expression faltered clearly, not expecting agreement. Excuse me for a minute, I added, placing my napkin beside my plate and standing up. I need to use the bathroom. As I walked away, I heard Jackson ask if I was okay, and Amanda's dismissive response. She'll be fine. She just doesn't like hearing the truth. In the upstairs bathroom, I locked the door behind me and leaned against the sink, trying to steady my breathing. The face in the mirror looked calm, but inside I was a storm of emotions, hurt, anger, disbelief, and beneath it all, a strange sense of clarity. For 2 years, I had been playing the role of financial savior while Amanda cast me as the irresponsible one to everyone else. The performance had cost me $20,000 so far, not to mention my mental peace. And for what? So she could take luxury weekends with her boyfriend while I pinched pennies. I pulled my phone from my pocket and opened my banking app. With steady fingers, I navigated to the automatic payments section and found the 6 recurring transfers set up for Amanda's various credit cards. One by one, I selected them and chose cancel payment. A warning popped up. Are you sure you want to cancel this recurring payment? I was never more sure of anything in my life. I pressed confirm for each one. That done, I opened my email and composed a message to my own financial advisor, instructing him to remove Amanda as the secondary beneficiary on my investment accounts and insurance policies. I had added her years ago, assuming she would need the safety net more than anyone else. That assumption, like many others I'd made about my sister, now seemed laughable. After sending the email, I splashed cold water on my face, reapplied my lipstick, and took one last steadying breath. Whatever happened next, I was prepared. The weight I'd carried for years had lifted, replaced by resolve. When I returned to the dining room, dessert was being served, pumpkin and apple pies with vanilla ice cream melting on top. I took my seat as if nothing had happened and accepted a slice of each from my mother. "Are you okay, dear?" she asked quietly. "Perfect," I replied, taking a bite of pie. And surprisingly, I meant it. Conversation resumed, somewhat stilted at first, but gradually returning to normal, as everyone followed the unspoken family rule: ignore the uncomfortable moment and move on. Amanda launched into a story about a difficult customer at her boutique, clearly trying to position herself as the reasonable one in all situations. I was halfway through my dessert when Amanda's phone sitting on the table beside her plate began to buzz. She glanced at it, frowned slightly, and turned it face down. A moment later, it buzzed again and again. "Popular today," Jackson commented. "It's probably just work," Amanda said dismissively, though the boutique would be closed for the holiday. The buzzing continued intermittently through the rest of dessert. Each time, Amanda's frown deepened. When her phone began ringing instead of just buzzing, she excused herself and stepped into the kitchen. Jackson, seemingly oblivious to the tension, helped himself to a second slice of pie and asked my father about his thoughts on some sporting event. I focused on my dessert, counting silently in my head. 3 minutes passed before Amanda burst back into the dining room. "Randy," she said, her face pale, "I need to speak with you. Now." "I'm enjoying my pie," I replied calmly, taking another bite. "Now," she repeated through gritted teeth. Our mother looked between us nervously. "Is everything all right?" "Fine," Amanda snapped, not taking her eyes off me. "Randy just needs to help me with something." Realizing that the confrontation was inevitable, I dabbed my mouth with my napkin and stood up. Of course, happy to help. I followed Amanda into the kitchen, where she immediately spun to face me, her phone clutched in her hand. "What did you do?" she demanded, her voice low and dangerous. "What do you mean?" I asked, though we both knew exactly what she meant. "Don't play dumb. I just got notifications that all the payments on my credit cards have been canceled. 6 different cards all at once. That's not a coincidence." I leaned against the counter and crossed my arms. "You were right at dinner. I need to stop playing the victim and take control of my finances, starting with where my money actually goes." Her eyes widened. "You can't be serious. You know I need those payments." "No," I corrected her, "you want those payments. What you need is to live within your means and pay your own debts." "We had an agreement," she hissed, glancing toward the dining room to make sure we weren't overheard. "Did we?" "Because I remember agreeing to help you get out of debt, not fund your lifestyle while you continued spending recklessly." Her expression shifted, anger giving way to calculation. "I have been paying them down. It's just taken longer than expected." "Amanda, I've seen the statements. I know about the new cards. I know about Miami." She had the decency to look momentarily ashamed before rallying. "That was just one trip. And the bracelet and the designer clothes and everything else you've been flaunting on Instagram while I eat leftovers and put off buying a new laptop that I actually need for work?" My voice remained calm, but I could feel 2 years of repressed frustration behind each word. "You make it sound like I forced you to help me," she said defensively. "You offered. And it's not like you can't afford it. You have that fancy job. A job where I work 60-hour weeks to earn my money, which I should be putting toward my future, not your shopping sprees." Amanda's tactics shifted, her expression softening. "Randy, please. You don't understand what this will do to me. My credit score will tank. They'll start calling again. I could lose my apartment. Then you'll learn what consequences feel," like I said, surprised by my own firmness. "Something you should have experienced a long time ago." "How can you be so cruel?" Tears sprang to her eyes, a tactic that had worked on me countless times before. "I'm your sister." "Yes, you are. And as your sister, the kindest thing I can do is stop enabling you." "What's going on in here?" Our mother's voice from the doorway startled us both. She stood there with a stack of dessert plates, our father right behind her. Jackson hovered uncertainly in the background. Amanda immediately turned to them, tears streaming now. "Randy's been paying off my credit card debt, and now she's stopping for no reason." My parents looked confused. "What credit card debt?" my father asked. "The $40,000 in debt that I've been helping her with for the past 2 years. I explained, deciding that if the truth was coming out, it might as well be the complete truth. I've paid down about $20,000 of it so far, but Amanda has continued spending and even opened new cards. My parents' shocked expressions would have been comical in any other situation. My father looked at Amanda as if seeing her for the first time. $40,000. How is that even possible? It's not as bad as she's making it sound, Amanda insisted. And I was going to pay her back eventually. With what money, I asked. Your boutique salary barely covers your rent, yet you're taking weekend trips to Miami and buying luxury items. My mother sank into a kitchen chair, plates still in her hands. Why didn't either of you tell us about this? Because I was handling it, I said. At the same time, Amanda said. Because it wasn't your business. Our contradictory responses hung in the air. From the doorway, Jackson cleared his throat awkwardly. Maybe I should give you all some family time. No, stay, Amanda said, quickly grabbing his arm. This concerns you too. We have plans, remember. She gave him a meaningful look that I couldn't interpret. Plans that involve my money? I asked sharply. We were talking about moving in together. Jackson admitted, looking increasingly uncomfortable. Amanda said she had some investments that would help with the deposit on a better apartment. I couldn't help it, I laughed. Investments. The only investments Amanda has are the ones I've been making in her credit score. Jackson looked at Amanda. Is that true? Do you not have savings? I have some money set aside, she insisted, but her voice lacked conviction. She has $20,000 in credit card debt, I corrected. And that's after I've paid off half of what she originally owed. Jackson took a step back, physically distancing himself from the situation. You told me you were financially stable. You said your job at the boutique was just something you did because you enjoyed fashion, not because you needed the money. I may have exaggerated a little, Amanda admitted, reaching for his hand, which he pulled away. But once I get this situation sorted out with Randy. There's nothing to sort out, I interrupted, gathering my purse from the counter where I'd left it earlier. I'm not paying anymore. The automatic transfers have been canceled. You can't do this to me. Amanda's voice rose, desperation replacing her earlier tactics. I have payments due next week. Then I suggest you call the credit card companies and work out a payment plan, I said, moving toward the hallway. That's what I would advise any of my clients to do. Where are you going? My mother asked, finally setting down the plates. Home, I replied, suddenly exhausted by the whole situation. I need some space, and I have a long drive ahead of me. But it's Thanksgiving, she protested. You were going to stay until Saturday. I think it's better if I leave now. I looked at my father, who seemed torn between disappointment and understanding. I'll call you tomorrow. As I retrieved my overnight bag from upstairs, I could hear the conversation continuing in the kitchen, my father's deeper tones, asking questions, my mother's concerned interjections, Amanda's increasingly panicked. 2 responses. By the time I came back downstairs, Jackson was putting on his coat. I think I'm going to head out too, he said to no one in particular. Amanda rushed to him. You don't have to go. We can talk about this. I think we need some time to reevaluate, he replied, not quite meeting her eyes. You weren't honest with me about something pretty important. As I passed through the living room toward the front door, Amanda blocked my path. You'll regret this when I'm completely broke, she said, her tone, somewhere between a threat and a plea. When they repossess my car or evict me, that'll be on you. I looked at my sister, really looked at her, and felt a strange mixture of sadness and relief. Your finances aren't my responsibility anymore, I said quietly. They never should have been. With that, I walked out the door and into the cold November evening, leaving behind the remnants of Thanksgiving dinner and years of financial servitude. The drive home felt surreal. Instead of the usual post-Thanksgiving fatigue and contentment, adrenaline kept me alert as I navigated the darkened highway. The radio played holiday music that seemed to belong to someone else's celebration, not the dramatic implosion of my family dinner. My phone buzzed repeatedly with texts from my mother. Please come back. We can talk this through. Your father is very upset. Call when you get home safely. Amanda is beside herself. What exactly happened between you two? I silenced the notifications, needing space to process everything. It wasn't until I was halfway to Boston that the magnitude of what I'd done hit me. I had not only cut off Amanda's financial lifeline, but had also exposed a secret I'd kept for 2 years. Our family dynamic would never be the same. Part of me wondered if I had overreacted. Perhaps I should have warned Amanda, given her time to prepare for the payments to stop. But another part, the part that had watched her flaunt her spending while I sacrificed, knew this clean break was necessary. When I arrived at my apartment, I was surprised to find several missed calls from Jackson, not Amanda. Curious, I returned his call. "I wanted to thank you," he said, when he answered, his voice subdued. "I had no idea about Amanda's financial situation. We've been dating for 3 months, and she always picked up expensive tabs, bought nice gifts. I thought." He trailed off. "You thought she was financially secure," I finished for him. "She's good at creating that impression." "Too good," he agreed. "I'm not a wealthy guy, Randy. I work in marketing, make a decent salary, but nothing extraordinary. I can't take on someone else's massive debt." "You shouldn't have to," I assured him. "That's not your responsibility." "I broke things off with her," he admitted. "After you left, she started talking about how I could help cover the payments you were stopping, as if we were at that stage in our relationship. When I hesitated, she got angry, said if I really loved her, I would step up." The manipulation tactic sounded painfully familiar. "I'm sorry you got caught in the middle of this," I said sincerely. "Not your fault. Better to know now than later." He paused. "For what it's worth, I think you did the right thing. Enabling never helps in the long run." After we hung up, I took a long shower, trying to wash away the tension of the day. When I finally checked my phone again, there were more texts now from my father, who rarely messaged. "Your mother and I had no idea what was happening. We should have a family meeting to discuss this properly. Amanda says there's more to the story than you're telling us. Is that true?" That last message stung. Even now, they were willing to believe there might be some justification for Amanda's behavior, some explanation that would make me the unreasonable one. I turned off my phone and went to bed, too emotionally drained to respond. The next morning, Black Friday, while most Americans were shopping for deals, I was making coffee and steeling myself to face the fallout. When I turned my phone back on the barrage, continued more texts from my parents, 2 voicemails from Amanda that I couldn't bring myself to listen to yet, and a message from Jackson saying Amanda had been calling him nonstop since their breakup. I decided to call my parents first, hoping for a calmer conversation than what had transpired at Thanksgiving. "Randy?" Thank goodness my mother answered immediately. "We've been so worried." "I'm fine, Mom. I just needed some space." "Your father wants to talk to you. I'm putting you on speaker." My father's voice came through uncharacteristically hesitant. "Randy, we need to understand what's been happening. Amanda told us you agreed to help with her debt because you felt guilty about making more money than her." I nearly choked on my coffee. "That's absolutely not true. I helped because she came to me crying, saying she was drowning in debt and didn't know what to do. I felt sorry for her, and yes, I believed in our family's help each other philosophy." $20,000 isn't just helping, my mother interjected. "That's a massive amount of money." $40,000 total, I corrected. "I've paid off about half so far." The silence on their end spoke volumes. "Why didn't you come to us?" my father finally asked, hurt evident in his voice. "Amanda begged me not to. She said she was embarrassed and didn't want to disappoint you both. And honestly, I thought I could handle it. I thought she would learn her lesson and become more responsible. Instead, she kept spending," my father said, more statement than question. "Yes. Weekend trips, designer clothes, expensive restaurants, all while I was making sacrifices to cover her minimum payments." Another silence. Then my mother asked softly, "What do we do now?" It was the first time she had ever asked me for family advice rather than the other way around. The role reversal wasn't lost on me. "Amanda needs to face reality," I said firmly. "She needs to contact her creditors, explain her situation, and work out payment plans she can actually afford. She might need to pick up a second job or find a roommate to cut expenses. These are normal steps that people take when they're in debt." "Your mother and I could help some," my father offered. "Dad, no," I said immediately. "If you bail her out, she'll never learn. And at your stage of life, you need to protect your retirement savings." "She's our daughter," he protested weakly. "Yes, and the best thing you can do for her is to help her become financially independent, not dependent." They didn't sound entirely convinced, but they agreed to think about it. Before hanging up, my father added, "Amanda came home late last night. She's still here, refused to go back to her apartment. She's..." not taking this well. She'll adjust, I said, hoping I sounded more confident than I felt. We all will. After the call, I finally forced myself to listen to Amanda's voicemails. The first was tearful, pleading, "Please call me back, Randy. I don't know what I'm going to do. The bank says my payments are due next week. I don't have the money. Please, I'm your sister." The second, recorded hours later, had shifted to anger. "Thanks for ruining my life. Jackson broke up with me because of you. Mom and Dad are looking at me differently. Are you happy now? Is this what you wanted?" I deleted both messages without responding. Instead, I spent the day doing something I had put off for months, researching condos in my price range. Without Amanda's debt payments, my options expanded considerably. For the first time in years, I allowed myself to focus on my own financial future rather than hers. Throughout the weekend, the messages continued. Amanda oscillated between anger and desperation. My parents tried to mediate, suggesting compromises that would have me partially funding her debt again. I held firm, repeating that Amanda needed to take responsibility for her own finances. By Sunday night, a new message appeared, this time from a number I didn't recognize. It was a mutual friend of ours, Rachel, who had apparently been drafted into the situation. "Amanda told me what happened," the text read. "She's really struggling. Could you two maybe talk in person, work something out?" I replied simply, "There's nothing to work out. Amanda needs to handle her own finances now." Rachel's response came quickly. She said she might have to move back home with your parents if she can't make rent. Is that what you want? The guilt trip might have worked months ago, but I was immunized now. That's her decision to make, and our parents' decision whether to allow it. The following week brought its own challenges. Amanda showed up at my workplace during lunch hour, causing a scene in the reception area that mortified me professionally. She tried calling from different numbers when I blocked hers. She even sent an email to my work address with the subject line, "Family Emergency, Financial Help Needed Immediately." I did not engage. Instead, I documented everything in case her behavior escalated to the point where I needed legal protection. 2 weeks after Thanksgiving, my mother called with news. "Amanda moved back home yesterday," she said, sounding resigned. "She couldn't make her rent payment without your help." "I'm sorry it's come to that," I replied sincerely. But maybe this is the rock bottom she needed to hit. Maybe my mother agreed, though she didn't sound convinced. "Your father's making her track every penny she spends. He's even talking about taking her to a financial counselor." It was the first intervention my parents had ever staged for Amanda, and it had taken my complete withdrawal to make it happen. "That's a good start," I encouraged. "Professional advice is exactly what she needs." "Will you come for Christmas?" my mother asked, changing the subject. "It won't be the same without you." I hesitated, the wound of Thanksgiving still fresh. "I don't know, Mom. Let me think about it." As November gave way to December, Amanda's creditors began the collection process in earnest. My father, true to his word, refused to pay her debts, but did help her negotiate with the credit card companies. It was the most financially engaged I had ever seen him, and for that alone, I was grateful for the Thanksgiving confrontation. By mid-December, Amanda had secured a second job at a coffee shop to supplement her boutique income. According to my mother, she was working 7 days a week and had sold many of her luxury items online. The Miami vacation seemed like a distant memory. Meanwhile, I put an offer on a small but well-located condo in Cambridge, something that would have been impossible had I continued funding Amanda's lifestyle. When the offer was accepted, I felt a strange mixture of joy and guilt, wondering if my happiness was built on my sister's hardship. A few days before Christmas, a letter arrived in my mailbox, handwritten on simple stationery, not Amanda's usual scented paper with her initials embossed at the top. With some trepidation, I opened it. "Dear Randy," it began, "I've started this letter a dozen times and torn it up. Nothing I say seems adequate, but I need to try anyway. I'm sorry, not just for Thanksgiving, but for the past 2 years. For taking advantage of your generosity, for treating you badly while you were sacrificing for me, for lying to everyone about our arrangement." The letter continued for 3 pages, detailing how the past month had forced her to confront her spending addiction, her entitlement, and the damage she had done to our relationship. It ended with, "I don't expect forgiveness right away. I haven't earned it yet. But I'm working on becoming someone who deserves to be your sister again. With love and genuine remorse, Amanda." For the first time since Thanksgiving, I cried not from hurt or anger, but from cautious hope that perhaps something good might eventually come from all this pain. The weeks following Thanksgiving unfolded in unexpected ways. The drive home that night became symbolic of my journey, moving away from familiar patterns into uncharted territory, navigating darkness with only my own judgment to guide me. My phone became a battlefield of competing narratives. My parents' texts alternated between concern for me and updates about Amanda. Jackson surprisingly became an unexpected ally, checking in occasionally to make sure I was holding firm in the face of Amanda's escalating attempts to regain my financial support. She showed up at my apartment last night, he texted 3 days after Thanksgiving, crying, saying if we got back together she could move in and save on rent. When I said no, she asked if I could loan her money just until she sorts things out with Randy. I thanked him for the update and the warning. Amanda was clearly working every angle trying to replace my support with someone else's, rather than addressing her spending habits. My parents, despite their initial shock, fell back into familiar patterns more quickly than I had hoped. Couldn't you help just a little longer, my mother suggested during one call? Just until Amanda gets back on her feet. She says her credit score is dropping by the day. That's how credit scores work, Mom, I explained patiently. They reflect financial responsibility. Amanda needs to rebuild hers through consistent payments, not my bailouts. The holidays approached, bringing their own emotional minefield. For the first time in my adult life, I declined my parents' invitation for Christmas Eve, choosing instead to volunteer at a local women's shelter. I couldn't face another family gathering so soon after Thanksgiving, especially with Amanda living at home again. My mother was heartbroken. Christmas without both my girls, I never thought I'd see the day. I need time, Mom, I said gently. This isn't just about money. It's about trust and respect, both of which were broken. I sent gifts thoughtfully chosen but less expensive than usual and called on Christmas Day. The conversation was stilted, with Amanda noticeably absent from the phone despite being in the house. My father mentioned that she was keeping busy with both jobs and learning to budget, which I took as positive signs. January brought freezing temperatures to Boston and a gradual thawing in my family relationships. My mother began calling without mentioning Amanda every time. My father sent occasional texts about sports or news, rebuilding our connection outside the context of family drama. Amanda, meanwhile, maintained her distance. After her heartfelt letter before Christmas, she didn't reach out directly for weeks. Through my parents, I learned that she had sold her car for a much cheaper model, moved into the smallest bedroom in their house to pay minimal rent, and was meeting weekly with a financial counselor my father had found. February arrived with unexpected news. I received a small envelope containing a check for $300 and a note. First payment, there will be more. The amount was symbolic, more than significant. It would take over 5 years to repay $20,000 at that rate, but the gesture mattered. Amanda was acknowledging the debt without being forced to, taking a first step toward responsibility. I deposited the check and sent a brief text, received. Thank you. Her reply came hours later. I know it's not much. Working on a better plan with the counselor. It was our first direct communication since Christmas, and it remained strictly business. The emotional reconciliation would take much longer than the financial one. In March, I closed on my Cambridge condo, a one-bedroom with a small office nook walking distance to the Charles River. As I unpacked my modest belongings, I realized how much mental space had been freed up along with my finances. For 2 years, Amanda's debt had been a constant background noise in my life, influencing every purchase, every plan. Now that mental bandwidth was my own again. I sent my new address to my parents, but not to Amanda. That boundary felt necessary, though I couldn't have articulated exactly why. Spring brought more small checks from Amanda, each accompanied by a brief note marking her progress. Picked up extra shifts, sold more clothes online, got a promotion at the boutique. The payments increased gradually, $350, $400, $450. In April, my mother called with news. Amanda's moving out next month. She found a roommate situation that's much cheaper than her old place. 2 other girls in a 3-bedroom in a less expensive neighborhood. That's good, I said, genuinely pleased for her. Smart financial decision. She wanted me to ask, would you be open to having coffee with her sometime? No pressure, just to talk. I hesitated, surprising myself with my reluctance. Part of me wanted to reconnect to see these positive changes firsthand. Another part remained wary protective of the independence I'd reclaimed. "Tell her I'll think about it," I replied, a non-answer that my mother accepted without pushing. May brought a different kind of communication, an email from Amanda with the subject line, "Financial update, no requests." Inside was a spreadsheet detailing her debt reduction plan created with her counselor. It showed all 6 credit cards, their current balances, interest rates, minimum payments, and her strategy for paying them down. It also included her budget showing significantly reduced expenses and increased income from her 2 jobs. At the bottom was a simple note, "For your information only. Not asking for help, just wanted you to know I'm serious about fixing this. Coffee offer still stands." I studied the spreadsheet with professional interest. It was well-constructed, realistic, and showed she would be debt-free in about 4 years if she maintained the plan. Without conscious decision, I found myself typing a reply. "Good plan. Snowball method works well for motivation. Coffee next Saturday." We met at a modest cafe halfway between our locations. I arrived first, securing a table by the window and ordering just a black coffee, still watching my spending out of habit despite my improved circumstances. When Amanda walked in, I almost didn't recognize her. Gone were the designer clothes and perfectly styled hair. Instead, she wore simple jeans and a plain sweater, her hair in a practical ponytail. She looked younger, somehow more like the sister I remembered from before the debt spiral. "Thanks for meeting me," she said, sliding into the seat across from me. Her voice lacked its usual confidence. "Your plan looks solid," I replied, defaulting to the financial topic as safer ground than our fractured relationship. "Jacob, my counselor, has been amazing. Dad found him through his teachers' union. He doesn't just talk about money mechanics, but the psychology behind spending." She fidgeted with her cup. "Turns out I was trying to buy friend status a certain image, using spending to fill something empty inside." The vulnerability in her admission caught me off guard. This introspection was new for Amanda. "That sounds like good insight," I managed. "I'm sorry, Randy," she said suddenly, looking directly at me. "I'm sorry for taking advantage of you. I'm sorry for twisting the narrative at Thanksgiving. I'm sorry for being a terrible sister while you were being an incredible one." The rehearsed quality of her apology made me wonder if this was homework from her counselor, but the tears in her eyes seemed genuine. "I appreciate that," I said carefully. "It's going to take time to rebuild trust." "I know. I'm not asking for anything except maybe the chance to try." We spent the next hour talking cautiously around the edges of our relationship, her new roommate situation, my new condo-safe topics that didn't venture into the still tender territory of her debt, or my feelings of betrayal. When we parted, we didn't hug, but we did make tentative plans to meet again the following month. June marked 6 months since the Thanksgiving confrontation. Amanda had repaid almost $3,000, a small fraction of the total, but a consistent effort that impressed me more than the amount itself. Our coffee meetings became a monthly occurrence, each one slightly less strained than the last. During this period, I received an unexpected call from my father. "I owe you an apology," he said, his voice gruff with emotion. "I should have noticed what was happening with Amanda's finances years ago, should have taught her better." "It's not your fault, Dad," I assured him. "Not entirely, but partly. Your mother and I always treated you two differently. Expected more from you, let Amanda get away with more. It wasn't fair." His acknowledgement healed something I hadn't even realized was wounded. "Thank you for saying that." "I'm proud of you," he continued. "Standing your ground was the right thing to do, even when we were pushing you to give in. It forced all of us to face some hard truths." By summer's end, Amanda had moved again, this time to a studio apartment she could afford on her own, having received another promotion at the boutique that allowed her to cut back hours at the coffee shop. Her monthly payments to me remained modest, but consistent, now accompanied by updates on her debt reduction progress. In August, she invited me to her new place for dinner instead of meeting at a cafe. The apartment was tiny but meticulously organized with secondhand furniture. She had refinished herself a new hobby that kept her occupied without costing much. "I'm learning to find satisfaction in things that don't involve spending," she explained, serving a home-cooked meal that must have cost a fraction of the restaurants she once frequented. As we ate, she hesitantly broached a new topic. "I've been thinking about going back to school. Just one night class at first to finish my degree slowly while working full-time." That sounds like a good plan. I encouraged, genuinely impressed by this long-term thinking. What field? Nonprofit administration, she replied. The boutique owner has connections with some charitable foundations. I think I'd like working somewhere that helps people rather than just selling them things they don't need. The irony wasn't lost on either of us, and for the first time since Thanksgiving, we shared a genuine laugh. By fall, we had established a new rhythm in our relationship. The financial aspect remained clearly delineated, regular payments, no new loans, but the emotional connection was slowly rebuilding on healthier ground. October brought an invitation from our parents for a small, low-key Thanksgiving, just the four of us, without the pressure of guests or elaborate preparations. After some consideration, I accepted. The drive to Connecticut that November felt nothing like the tension-filled journey of the previous year. As I pulled into the familiar driveway, I realized that while Amanda's debt to me remained substantial in financial terms, the emotional ledger between us had begun to balance in ways I never expected. 1 year after that fateful Thanksgiving, my life had transformed in ways both visible and invisible. The most obvious change was my living situation. A charming one-bedroom condo in Cambridge, with large windows that flooded the space with natural light. After years of renting, I finally had a place that was truly mine, with walls I could paint and a small balcony where I grew herbs in the summer. My financial situation had improved dramatically without Amanda's debt payments draining my accounts. I had rebuilt my emergency fund, increased my retirement contributions, and even begun a small investment portfolio separate from my retirement accounts. All goals that had seemed impossibly distant just a year earlier. Amanda had undergone an even more profound transformation. The shopaholic who once spent without thought had become almost ascetic in her approach to money. Her studio apartment was furnished with second-hand finds she had restored herself. Her wardrobe, once filled with designer labels, now consisted of quality basics she mixed and matched creatively. She had completed 1 semester of night classes toward finishing her business degree and was talking about specializing in nonprofit management. Most importantly, she had maintained her debt repayment schedule without faltering. Though the amount remained substantial each month, brought it down by a little more. She had consolidated the remaining credit card debt into a lower-interest personal loan and closed all but 1 credit card, which she used sparingly for emergencies and online purchases, paying the balance in full each month. Our relationship had evolved into something new, not the unquestioning closeness of our childhood, nor the enabler-enabled dynamic of the debt years, but something more balanced. We met for coffee every few weeks, texted occasionally about trivial matters, and were slowly relearning how to be sisters without financial entanglement. Thanksgiving arrived with none of the previous year's tension. Our mother prepared a simpler meal, forgoing some of the more elaborate side dishes in favor of quality time together. The dining table felt expansive with just the 4 of us around it. No external guests to impress or perform for. When it came time for our traditional sharing of gratitude, my father went first. "I'm grateful for second chances," he said, looking meaningfully at Amanda, "and for the wisdom to recognize when tough love is necessary." His glance shifted to me with unmistakable respect. My mother's gratitude focused on having her family reunited. "This time last year, I wasn't sure we would all be together again," she admitted. "I'm thankful for healing." When Amanda's turn came, she took a deep breath. "I'm grateful for consequences," she said, surprising us all, "for hitting rock bottom and finding out it wasn't as scary as I thought. For learning that I'm stronger than my impulses." She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small box, sliding it across the table to me. "And for my sister, who cared enough to stop saving me." Inside the box was a simple silver bookmark engraved with the words, "Sometimes love means letting go." It couldn't have cost much, which made it all the more meaningful, purchased with money she had earned and saved carefully. "Thank you," I said, genuinely touched. "It's perfect." When my turn came, I looked around at my family, imperfect healing, trying their best. "I'm grateful for boundaries," I said. "For learning that helping isn't always the same as giving people what they want. And for discovering that relationships can be stronger when they're built on honesty instead of obligation." After dinner, while our parents cleaned up, Amanda and I stepped outside for a walk around the neighborhood, a new tradition we had started a few months earlier during family visits. "Do you remember what you said to me last Thanksgiving?" she asked as we crunched through fallen leaves. When you were leaving and I tried to guilt you about potentially going broke, I think I said something about your finances not being my responsibility. You did, and I hated you for it in that moment. She shoved her hands deeper into her coat pockets against the November chill. But it was exactly what I needed to hear. No one had ever said that to me before. Not our parents, not friends, not boyfriends. Everyone always either gave me money or told me what to do with it, but no one had ever simply said, "This is yours to handle." I wasn't trying to teach a lesson, I admitted. I was just setting a boundary I should have set much earlier. That's what made it work, though. You weren't trying to fix me. You were taking care of yourself, and that forced me to take care of myself, too. We walked in silence for a moment before she continued. Jacob, my financial counselor, says that's the problem with enabling. It looks like help on the surface, but it actually prevents growth. Like those plants that never develop strong stems because they're always propped up. The analogy struck me as particularly pertinent. How much longer until you're debt-free? About 3 years if I stick to the current plan, she said without hesitation. Sooner if I get another raise or find additional income sources. And the payments to me? She stopped walking, turning to face me directly. I will pay back every cent, Randy, even if it takes a decade. That's non-negotiable. I know you will, I said, and realized I truly believed it. Back at the house, I found my father alone in the living room pretending to watch football, but clearly waiting for a moment to speak privately. Your sister isn't the only one who's changed, he said when I sat beside him. Your mother and I have been taking a hard look at our own financial situation. We realized we've been too passive, just assuming the pension would cover everything. That's a common mistake, I said, slipping into my professional tone before catching myself. Sorry, I don't mean to sound like a financial advisor right now. But that's exactly what we need, he insisted. Someone who understands this stuff. We've been talking about it, and we'd like your help reviewing our retirement plans if you're willing. As a consultant, not as our daughter doing us a favor. We want to pay your professional rate. The offer stunned me. My parents had always been fiercely independent about their finances, reluctant to admit they might need guidance. This request represented a fundamental shift in how they saw me, not just as their daughter, but as a competent professional they trusted. I'd be honored, I said, feeling a strange reversal in our traditional family roles. We can set up a formal consultation after the holidays. That evening, as we gathered in the living room for board games, another new tradition that cost nothing but created lasting memories. I watched my family with fresh eyes. My mother laughing as she drew a difficult card, my father studying the board with the same concentration he now applied to his finances, Amanda keeping score with meticulous attention. We were healing not despite the painful confrontation of last Thanksgiving, but because of it. The truth, however, uncomfortable, had forced us all to grow. When I drove home the following day, I reflected on the most important lesson I'd learned. True generosity isn't about giving people what they want, but what they need to grow. Sometimes that means financial support, but sometimes it means stepping back and allowing natural consequences to become teachers. In my profession as a financial advisor, I had always understood the mechanics of money, the formulas, the strategies, the projections. What the past year had taught me was the psychology of money, how it shapes relationships, enables patterns, and sometimes creates barriers to genuine connection. This knowledge made me not just a better financial advisor, but a stronger person, someone who valued herself enough to say no when necessary and yes when appropriate. Someone who understood that boundaries aren't walls but healthy definitions of where one person ends and another begins. As I unlocked the door to my condo, the home I had been able to purchase because I reclaimed my financial independence, I felt a deep sense of peace. The journey had been painful, but the destination was worth it. Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with loved ones around money or other sensitive issues? How did it change your relationship? Let me know in the comments below, and if this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share. Sharing it with someone who might need to hear it. Remember, sometimes the most loving thing we can do for others is to stop doing what keeps them dependent. Thank you for listening to my story, and I wish you strength in your own journey toward healthier relationships.